Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Broken Banquet, a podcast about missions. We are your hosts, Will Bailey and Dr. Ashley Goad, and we are so glad that you have joined us for another conversation about the church and missions, about what healthy mission relationships can look like, and as we hear from others who have dedicated their lives in one way or another to mission work. We're so glad you're here, and we hope you enjoyed this episode. See, now I can sit back, though. This is good. We're good.
That's good. I'm so glad.
Right. Yeah. Hey, how was your trip, Ashley?
My trip was so good, Will. It was so good to spend time with Jeremy and Tamara and their kids, their 4 kids. It was like a big cuddle fest, just being together. Balm for the soul, Will. Balm for the soul.
It sounds great.
Yeah. We've been in the big, rabbit race around here in the church. It's not rabbit race, is it? It's something else.
Not to be confused with the rat race. It's
Rat
the
race.
rabbit race.
We've been in the rat race here at the church, and it's kind of like throwing the towel in the bag. I just like it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, when the rabbit race gets to be just a little too much for you, you might feel like you need to throw the towel in the bag and just give me a call. We'll talk through it.
My colloquialisms, they're always on target. Always on target.
Yeah. It would not be the Broken Banquet without mixed metaphors.
How you doing, Will? What have you been up to?
I'm good. I've got a feeling today's episode we're really going to hit the nail on the target. So we're good. We're good. We're busy. We've just started a new project. There's a church about 45 minutes away from here that 5 years ago started as a house church in somebody's living room. And they've grown to the point where now they've got about 80 people coming to worship every Sunday. And they had been renting a space for a while in the community that they're in, and were able to purchase some land and reached out to us to see if we could partner with them to help build a proper worship space. So we broke ground 2 weeks ago on a new sanctuary that'll have room for about 300 people in it. So we're excited. They're excited. We've had 2 teams work there so far, and they've been really excited about the work, but also just about the people from the community that they're getting to know who have come to be a part of it and show their appreciation and just share. The last thing the team that's there today did was they had communion with the pastor and some of the local church members right there just under a tree at the work site, which that's it right there. That's what it's all about. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's good.
I can't wait to come down in there and work there myself. I saw the pictures that you posted. It was so nice.
Mm-hmm.
And the pictures of the team praying with the church leaders just warmed my soul.
Yeah, it's a good project. We're really thankful when people like this church reach out to us and we can partner together. So it's good stuff.
Well, this episode, if I'm not mistaken, is going to air on February 13th. And on February 13th, I will be on an airplane headed east for Tel Aviv, Israel.
Yeah. And 2 days after that, I will be on an airplane headed east to Tel Aviv. This is a little out of the ordinary for the Broken Banquet. We're not interviewing anybody today. We're just going to have a little conversation about, I think we both realized how important these trips to the Holy Land are, and just thought we would sort of share some of our thoughts about that, what our experiences have been so far, and what we're hopeful for these trips that are coming up. So, yeah.
Well, because I'm awesome, I created at least a top 5 questions to ask.
Of course you did.
All right, so here we go. Question number 1. We have to answer all of these together. So not just you. I'm not just interviewing you, but we're interviewing each other. Okay. So what is
these are talking points more than like straight up questions?
No,
or are they questions?
They're questions.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
All right. Go.
All right. Well, question number 1. If you're ready.
Can we stop for a second? Because just that right there reminded me of something. I was listening back to one of our interviews recently while I was editing it. And I realized that since people can't see the two of us, there was this one little interchange between you and I, and it might have sounded like I was really angry at you.
Oh,
And if they could see us, they would very clearly see that we were both sort of amused at the situation. But I realized that without the visual part, I mean, it's kind of sounded like Will was fighting with Ashley. And so I just want to say, I don't know when that episode is. It may have already aired. It may be one that airs after this one. But folks, just everyone out there in podcast land that might have been concerned, Ashley and I are really good friends. We don't fight with one another. And we have the most respect for one another. So if the tone of our conversation sometimes doesn't reflect that, just know that we really do love one another very much, and we don't fight with one another. And it's maybe it's a shame that you can't actually see how much fun we're having doing
yeah.
this.
Absolutely, Will. There is no one I love more on earth than other maybe my dog and my husband, you know, those
Yeah,
kinds of
that I
people.
know it's a long list. It's okay as long as I'm on there somewhere. So now that we got that out of the
Thank
way,
you.
yeah, God, get to your list, Ashley.
Here we go. Number 1, what is the place that has most stuck in your heart in the Holy Land?
Hmm. Okay, first of all, there's going to be a lot of long pauses that we're going to be able to. I'll edit out of this one.
Yeah, that's okay.
The place that has most.
While you're thinking, I'm gonna tell you this, that there's a new donut place that just opened up downtown, and so on my way back from lunch, Steven and Matthew and I stopped in the donut place,
Uh-huh.
and they had Nutella donuts. Will, my heart is just so full right now. I love you. I love our podcast. I love this donut. I love my husband. There is so much goodness
Wow.
just seeping from me because of this day that I'm having. Okay, what is your most favorite?
Next time you go in there, tell them I said thanks. Okay. Um, So that's an easy question to answer when I think about my first trip, which I've been twice. I'm getting ready to go for the third time. And I can remember clearly the day that we went to Capernaum, sitting at the edge of the Sea of Galilee, sort of by myself, and just looking out over that body of water. And the thought that kept coming to my mind was, this is real. This is really real, you know? And it's not because I doubted the stories of the Bible, but just to be there and to see it and hear it and smell it and all of that other stuff it was pretty overwhelming. I'm not a super emotional guy, but that was a very emotional experience, just sitting there on a rock at the edge of the Sea of Galilee. So that's one that comes to mind pretty quickly. Yeah.
Mm.
How about you?
Well, I was gonna say Capernaum, but since you said it, I'm gonna go a different direction now. Um, the edge of the sea, and you can help me with names because I don't remember names well, but where Peter was restored, where Jesus was cooking him lunch, was it the Church of the
Mhm.
Primacy?
Yeah, that's the church, the primacy of Peter. Yes. So yeah, also at the edge of the Sea of Galilee, but
Also at
a
the edge
different
of the Sea
spot.
of Galilee. Right. So edge of the Sea of the Galilee, and I think that was the one place I had just this was on my second trip. I had just preached a sermon right before my second trip to Israel, and going to the Sea of Galilee right there where Peter would have been restored. I thought back to that sermon because I had made a correlation between Peter standing at the charcoal fire during the denials of Jesus to then Peter standing in front of this charcoal fire where Jesus was cooking him breakfast and getting ready to restore him. And I made the correlation that for Peter, shame had a smell,
Hmm.
and that smell was charcoal. So as he was standing at that charcoal fire denying Jesus, that stuck in his brain. Smell's one of those big senses that we have that we remember things with. And now he's getting off the boat. He smells that charcoal again, and now he can associate it with restoration and how much his Messiah loves him and how
Hmm.
he will be the one that the rock will be built, his church will be built on Peter. So standing on that Sea of Galilee, thinking about charcoal having a smell, and charcoal being the smell of shame, um, and then charcoal being the smell of restoration. I just sat there and took deep breaths in and tried to imagine myself knowing how shameful I can be, but then being restored by Christ. And so that's been one of the things that have stuck in my heart.
That's really good, Ashley. I'm gonna totally steal that when I'm there in a few weeks. I'm like, "Hey, group, gather around. I've got some thoughts I'd like to share with you about this place."
Would you please? Would you please?
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, I think it's interesting that for both of us from that very first trip, one of the things that meant the most to us was being right there at the edge of the Sea of Galilee. And I wonder how much of that has to do with so many of the things that we see when we're there. It's, it's rubble. It's things that were torn down and rebuilt, or it's a church that's it's been built on top of a spot where we think something happened. But I mean, the Sea of Galilee is the Sea of Galilee. Like it's what it is, and it has been that for all these years. So it's one of the places where it's pretty easy to say, well, this is where that happened.
Mhm.
So I wonder if that helps it mean more. Anyway,
Hmm.
okay.
Okay. All right. Question two. Question two. Here we go. What place haven't you seen that you can't wait to see? Are you going anywhere new?
We are not going anywhere new this time. Everywhere
Mm,
that is on my itinerary for this trip, I've been to either on my first trip or my second trip. So we're not going anywhere new this time. There is one place that I hope they're going to let us go that we're supposed to go to, which is Jacob's Well in Nablus. But that's
right.
one of those conditions permitting. So we'll just know when we get up that morning if it's a good idea for us to go or not. So I'm really keeping my fingers crossed that we'll get to go and share that with everybody. But we don't have anywhere new on our itinerary this year. What are you doing new this year?
We are going to Engedi, and
Mm-hmm.
Engedi is traditionally the place where David was hiding from King Saul.
Mm-hmm.
And King Saul came to find him, and David cut away the little triangle of his coat, his
Mm-hmm.
cloak. And it's also a place where John the Baptist may have been hanging out and living. So I hear it's just a beautiful oasis, and I've been wanting to go. So I made sure that the day we're heading down to Qumran and Masada, we're going to stop by Engedi on the way. So very excited to see a little oasis in the midst of the desert.
Yeah. Let me know how that is.
Yeah, we'll do.
Maybe
We'll
I'll
do.
add that to my next one.
Well, I saw Ray Vanderlaan, who's one of my favorite like teachers that we do Bible studies here at the church with. He one of his videos was at Engedi, and I was like, "Oh, we have to go there. We have to go there." So I hope it'll live up to it.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. All right. Why? Okay, so this is your third trip. Why are you looking forward to trip three?
Several reasons. One, because my wife is going with me this time, and I cannot wait to expose her to it, but also watch her experience it. It's just going to be so exciting to see her feel all the things that she's going to feel. So super excited about that. We've been preparing for it for a long time, and we've been reading things together and sort of studying to get ready for the trip. So that's going to be awesome. But just to go back, I mean, I decided after that second trip, I will go as often as I can go because there's just something about it that it got me. And so I mean, unless I for some reason stop being this excited about going, I intend to continue to go. So I'm excited just to be going back. The first time I went, I thought that was probably the only time I would ever go. I never imagined that I would be able to go more than once. So yeah, I'm super excited, and oh my gosh, I just can't wait to see it through Yolanda's eyes. And we've invited a pastor
Mhm.
from Costa Rica to go along with us. So actually, and he's like family. So actually, to get to go with both of them and watch the two of them, I just can't wait. I can't
Oh,
wait.
that'll be exciting. I can't wait to run into you while we're there so I can see how
Yes.
excited Yolanda is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I do love seeing it through the eyes of those who have not been. So,
Mhm.
why am I looking forward to trip number 3? Simply because of the group we have going from here at the church. I love to be able to see how the relationships come together and how the deepening of faith comes together in the midst of a faith family. So I'm excited for our church members to be going on this trip so that they can bond together and bond where they are, grow in their discipleship. And I'm also excited because, again, so many of our global mission partners are going to be coming along with us.
Mhm.
So we'll see you, but we have Olga and Igor for Russia, and Stefania Dragosh from Romania, Jessica in Czech Republic, Nate from New Zealand, and John Woodward. So our favorite co-host will be there too.
Yeah.
So it'll be like a
Yeah.
mini reunion.
Yeah. Broken Banquet reunion in the Holy Land.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
All right. What else we got? What surprised you about the Holy Land, Will?
The first time, the crowds. I
Yeah.
did embarrassingly little research before the first trip.
Me too.
So there was a lot about it that surprised me, but just I
Me
think
too.
how many other people had also decided they wanted to go to the Holy Land
Yeah.
shouldn't have surprised me, but it did. I think the proximity of everything was a big eye opener, and realizing just how small the area where everything that happened in Jesus's life happened.
Mhm.
Um, which that was really interesting and sort of changes the way you read those stories when you realize how close everything was, and that you could walk from Nazareth to Jerusalem in 6 days on the long road and 3 on the short road.
Right.
When you realize that when they're standing on the Mount of Olives and he's praying for Jerusalem, it's like right there at the bottom of the hill.
Mhm.
So that sort of it just gives you a different perspective.
Mhm.
So those things, that was a surprise. And then I guess the reality of daily life in that part of the world right now was surprising. Just how visible the divisions and the tension and that kind of stuff is. I wasn't really prepared for that. So yeah, those were 3 pretty big surprises.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I would agree too. I was surprised, I think, by our guide just saying, well, if he didn't stand here, then it was probably right about here. So the proximity of how close they could come to Jesus actually did stand here. And the emotion that I had when standing in Capernaum and standing in the teaching steps, where they can say, without a doubt, 100%,
Hmm.
Jesus stood right here. And I was not expecting the emotion that came over me in those moments to feel that connected to Jesus. So,
Hmm.
of course, being in the land of where he was born and where he was teaching and all of this, it was beautiful. But then to actually stand where he stood, oh, it just overcame me. It still brings tears to my eyes when I think about it. And when I went on that second trip, it brought tears to my eyes again, just
Hmm.
standing in those places. Um,
Yeah, I'm so glad that we do the teaching steps towards the end,
mhm,
because you've had so many days of seeing things where tradition says that maybe this is where something happened, or in this general vicinity, this. And for some people that's a real disappointment. Like, they think they're
mhm.
going to see a bunch of places where Jesus like signed his name on the wall.
Yeah.
And so once you realize that that's not accurate, and people who want to go and walk where Jesus walked, well, those streets have either been destroyed or buried
Mhm.
multiple times by now. But that there are these couple of places where it's pretty daggone certain that he stood on this spot. It's nice to have sort of that reward at the end of the trip.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Teaching steps is a highlight for me for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know what else was a highlight for me? And maybe we'll get down to this in another point, but you and I went on a special field trip last year with Jonathan Beck and with Michael Perisher. And we decided that we would go to a place called Razuk's Tattoos. And
Hmm.
Razuk is a family that came from Egypt. They're Coptic Christians, and they were tattooers there and opened up a tattoo parlor in Old City, Jerusalem. And their family tattooing business dates back 800 years. So we decided to go get our Holy Land pilgrimage tattoos at this tattoo parlor that had been around for 800 years.
I think it's the 28th generation of this one family that they started out tattooing the Coptic Christians in Egypt, which was like their ID card. In order to
Mhm.
be able to get into worship spaces, that was the only way, because of the tension between the Christians and the Muslims there, it was dangerous. And so that was how you proved that you were what you said you were, was by having a, cross or something tattooed on you. And then I think 500 or 600 years ago, this family moved to Jerusalem and started tattooing pilgrims. And to me, it sort of relates to one of the reasons why being able to go means so much to me. It's not just about the places that we visit
Yeah.
and the feels that that gives us, but it's about being a part of that story of Christian pilgrimage and knowing that for 2,000 years almost, believers from all over the world have been making the effort to go, not because you're closer to God when you're there, but just to go and to experience that journey, whatever it means to you personally, for us now in 2023, to be a part of that story and a part of that number of people who have done that. To me, that's special.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I definitely wanted to figure out a way to sort of commemorate that. And so, yeah, it's with me for the rest of my life now, this Jerusalem cross on my back. And I'm glad that you went with me and went first.
That was the best part of it. Me, and 3 fellas going in there, and everybody was kinda like, "Well, maybe you go. Well, maybe you go." "No, just let me go, guys. I'll show you the
Yep.
way."
Yep.
It was great.
Fearless leader.
Now, will you be getting, an addition this go round?
So yeah, so when I got my cross, I also got the Roman numerals for the 2 years that I have done my pilgrimages to the Holy Land. And so my intention is to continue to add Roman numerals every time I go back, just sort of as a kind of like getting your visa stamped in your passport. That's sort of what these will be for me. So yes, we have an appointment.
Awesome. Do you think Yolanda will go?
She is thinking about it. Yeah.
Okay. Hmm.
Yeah, it's tricky for us. If you think about the stigmas that tattoos, I mean, still have in the US, but think about that 20 years ago and what that was like. And imagine, someone serving in the church having visible tattoos 20 years ago. That's kind of where Costa Rica is now. And so
Mhm.
obviously mine is in a place that it's very easy for no one to know I have it except, someone who I guess sees me at the beach or is listening to this podcast. But other than that, I can be in front of the church, I can be in front of the youth group and not confuse anybody.
Mhm.
Um, Yolanda is considering something that would be a little more visible. It's she was going to get the word redeemed across her forehead, and I think
Right.
I've talked her out of that one.
Okay.
But
Hmm.
yours are small and discreet on your wrist, and that's sort of what she would like to do. But the struggle is that it's going to be harder for her to cover that when we're in situations where it might confuse people. So you know what, you can debate whether they're right or wrong or whatever until the horses come home, or until you're green in the face, or whatever mixed metaphor you want to use there. But we'll see.
Okay. A watch band hides
Yeah.
this really well. Yep.
Yeah. What how about you? Are you finally going to get Jesus on the cross tattooed on your whole back?
I've been going back and forth about it. Maybe only as long as it has like bright, bright colors with it too. So
Sure.
I don't know. I don't know. I do, I have this whole this duo on my wrist, and the other side is looking like it could use something to even it all out,
Mhm.
and that would be the trifecta of it all. Um,
The trinity of tattoos, if you will.
Indeed, indeed, yes. So, but I don't know what it would be. Mino is such a that's the word that's
Mhm.
closest to my heart, and but Mino in Greek is Mino. Like it's not really fun, cool characters or anything like that. It's just
Mm.
Mino. So I don't know. I haven't decided yet. It might be a game time decision like it was when I was with you. So
Right.
yeah.
Right. Well, if you need a nudge, let me know.
Okay.
Mm. Yeah.
All right. Top 5 sites.
Have to give an explanation for each one or just name
No,
them?
just name
Okay.
them.
Top 5. Capernaum, teaching steps, Jacob's Well,
Mm-hmm.
Church of the Holy Sepulchre.
Interesting.
What would be the fifth? You know, the ruins of the temple that they've uncovered in Magdala is pretty cool with that pedestal that they found that like really likely could be where Jesus unrolled scrolls and taught. That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. That's your 5?
Sure.
All right. I was writing mine down, so I didn't. Okay. All right. So mine are a little bit different. Capernaum,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
Capernaum. I mean, it's just so. It's the highlight. It is where Jesus was home based for 3 years. Peter lived there. Andrew taught in the temple, standing on holy ground. Sea of Galilee right there. Holy cow! It's just amazing. So yeah, Capernaum. Number 2 was Magdala, so thanks for stealing that one from me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Maybe mine for a different reason than yours. So the Catholic Church has built these beautiful churches just about at every site, or Orthodox churches have built churches at these sites to preserve the sites. Beautiful things. The one at Magdala, the chapel at Magdala, it has 7 pillars inside, and 6 of the pillars has a female, a biblical female, that was a disciple of Christ or somebody that we can look to for her teaching. The 7th pillar is blank so that you can put yourself in that place because Jesus has also called you and asked you to go out and to spread the word. I loved Magdala. I can't wait to go back there. Okay. Number 3,
Very
Jacob's
good.
Well. Jacob's Well. Have
Mm-hmm.
to love Jacob's Well. The woman at the well. I see
Mm-hmm.
you. Sawabona. Of course. That's it. Number 4 would be the garden tomb. So this is the alternate site of where Jesus was unlikely buried, but maybe he was. But I love being in the simplicity of that area. To go into the tomb, yes, and we always celebrate a communion service there, and it's
Mm-hmm.
just this beautiful, peaceful time to end a trip, to bring it all together, and to know that this is something that connects you to Jesus, something that connects you with the people in your group, and something that connects you with the people of the world. We all come to the table at the garden tomb. And then my final place that I do love is coming down the Palm Sunday Road through the Mount of Olives, and you stop at the Russian Orthodox Church, which is called the
Dominus Flevit.
Thank you. And there is an overlook that overlooks the valley,
Mm-hmm.
and you look over into Jerusalem, and you think about Jesus standing there and Jesus weeping, knowing what's
Mm-hmm.
coming, and the magnitude of how he must have felt. And then to be able to see the ground that he covered in that last week of his life and the exhaustion he must have felt. So I
Mm-hmm.
love at that site standing there with him, and knowing that he had been there overlooking what his last week would have been
Mm-hmm.
like.
Yeah, I remember the devotional that you led when we were there the last time. That was really, really good. The way you sort of brought it all home before we went into the city and started seeing the things in the city, but then just sort of before that, looking out over it and putting that into context was really powerful.
hmm It's beautiful. All right, those were my 5 questions. Will, what
Mhm.
else you got?
Well, I've been thinking, knowing that we were going to do this episode, and just sort of thinking for myself about why this trip means so much to me, and how different I feel about it now than I did the first time that I went. And there's two things that I've kind of boiled it down to, maybe. And the first one I mentioned earlier, the whole just being part of that history and knowing that, like, I think a lot about the word sacred. What does it mean for a place to be a sacred place? Does this have to have been the spot where X, Y, or Z actually happened for it to be sacred? Or can the fact that for 2,000 years, people have been coming to this spot to remember that event, is that enough to make it sacred? And for me personally, kind of the point I've come to is that that story is so deep and so long, and has mattered so much to so many people that that is enough to make it sacred. And so I love being able to be in those spaces and like I said, be a part of that story.
Mhm.
But the other thing I was thinking about, I think I mentioned this in a previous episode, was how different my first and second experiences were, especially in regards to Jerusalem. I
Mm.
really did not like the Jerusalem part of our trip the first time I went, mostly because I hadn't prepared myself. And so I just didn't know what to make of it. And one of the things in particular that I was troubled by was going into these big churches, kind of cathedrals,
Mhm.
um, and seeing all this stuff. This is how
Mhm.
I was interpreting it at the time. Like all this stuff. There's gold stuff and silver stuff and icons and just stuff everywhere. And to me, it sort of looked like this is just kind of ostentatious for ostentatiousness' sake. Like they're just
Mhm.
they're bragging about their gold and silver. And I didn't like that very much. Fortunately, after that trip, when I was preparing for the second one and reading as much stuff as I could and studying as much as I could, one of the things that I learned was how in the time period when a lot of those churches and cathedrals were built, the world was gray, right? Everything was just gray and dirty. And, it was polluted and they didn't have the kinds of sanitation that we have and all that kind of stuff. So it was just gray.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
when they built these worship spaces, these sacred spaces, you come into it and there's light from outside reflecting off of all of this gold and silver. And so it's just bright, shimmering light everywhere you turn. And, the smells outside are pretty unpleasant, but you
Yeah.
come inside and there's this incense burning. And so it's this very pleasant smell. And then the seeing the smoke of the candles and the incense kind of wafting upwards towards the heavens, sort of like we hope our prayers do. The sound, the acoustics in these buildings, hearing the people singing and chanting, and the way that those voices would reverberate and bounce back and forth and sort of swirl around, and all of that stuff was intentional. They did that on purpose so that as you went from the outside world where everything's gray and gross and dirty into this sacred space, your senses are involved in this spiritual experience that takes you into the heavenly. And that I just thought was amazing. And I don't know how to make if you sort of can draw a direct line between that and I'm sure there are things that we do in modern worship, in 2023 that try and sort of accomplish the same things. But I think the fact that the very design of these buildings was meant to transport you, if the Church of
Mhm.
All Nations, which is the one at the Garden of Gethsemane, that the whole
Mhm.
ceiling inside this church is painted like the Starry Night with the same constellations that would have been visible the night
Yeah.
Jesus fled into the garden to pray. Like it was meant to transport you somewhere else. And so I love that now. Like I just think that's fascinating. And it's one of the reasons why I love now the Jerusalem portion of these trips is to get to go
Mm.
into those spaces and to think about how much that matters. I mean, yes, you can sit anywhere and close your eyes and have a beautiful moment with God, and
Mhm.
there's great value in that. But I think there's also great value in being in a space that was constructed for that very thing. So it just totally redeemed it for me. But it was just because I took the time to learn.
Mind blown. I did not know this. Like, I must
Really?
not have
I thought
I
you
did
were sitting there nodding because you were like, Will, why are everybody knows this? Why are you talking about
I
this?
had no idea. None. I had no idea at all. I'm going to look at all of these because I often, I travel a lot. So I end up going into a lot of Orthodox churches, Catholic churches, all sorts of things all over Europe and Russia and the rest. Never put that together. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to steal your speech about Peter's redemption at the edge of the Sea of Galilee,
Yeah.
and you can steal mine about sacred space.
Boom. Done. Done. Good
Ooh,
trade-off there.
that's a
Whew,
good that's a good partnership.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was thinking too back to my first trip, because I did not like Jerusalem. It was just so crowded. So,
Mhm.
so crowded. And walking the Via Dolorosa, we had an elderly lady on our trip, and she had come to the end of the trip. She was done. And here we go walking down the Via Dolorosa, and we are being pushed and prodded and pushed, and it was a massive experience, so much so that she just wanted to sit down in the middle of the Via Dolorosa. And she was like, "I just don't think I can go on anymore." And so, and this was still at the beginning part of it. And so Stefani and I got on either side of her and grabbed her arms and nearly carried her all the way through the walk on the Via Dolorosa. And one of the awe-inspiring moments is, you go through the Stations of the Cross as you walk down the Via Dolorosa, and one is where Jesus sees his mother and, starts to weep, and Mary starts to weep, and we stopped there because we all needed a break, and Anne turns to Stefania and I and said, "I just can't imagine seeing my boy walking down this road."
Hmm.
And she started crying. She said, "Can you actually, what if it was Mackinson standing here in front of you, walking with a cross down this road, and you just wanted to reach out and grab him and hug him?" It was this beautiful, beautiful moment of realizing that this was exactly how it would have been 2,000 years ago, with the marketplaces come out onto the road with all of their baskets and fruits and juices and everything for sale, people walking, because we were there at the same time as getting close to Passover, so the Jerusalem was expanding with people, and walking down this road. Now, we didn't have 250 pounds of a crossbar on us, but we were carrying a sweet little lady, trying to make sure that she
Mhm.
got to walk this cobblestone street. And it all just became so real and so personal of, this was my Messiah, who was also a human, who also had a mother, and,
Mhm.
um, just a beautiful, beautiful moment that I will never forget. So I remember that now, no matter what the crowds are, that these are this is where Jesus was. This is much like it was then, and try to bring those who are traveling with me into that same scenario of, this is how it would have been then.
Mhm.
Makes the crowd seem a little less.
That just makes me think about how, on the one hand, I think it would be really interesting to go at some point, but by myself.
Mhm.
Um, but by going with a group of people, you experience things like that
Mhm.
because you're drawn into the deeply personal things that they are experiencing. That if it was just me sort of silently taking all of this
Mhm.
stuff in, I mean that's one thing, and there's value in that too. But I'm so thankful that there's 31 people in our group, and so that's 31 different perspectives on every single thing that we're going to see. That I'm looking forward to those times when we'll get to share about that and learning things from them that maybe I haven't seen or haven't dawned on me. I talked
Mhm.
to our group as we were preparing. We had a meeting a few weeks ago, and I talked to them about how I feel like there's sort of three sources of kind of information that we get that informs us about these places that we're going to visit. One is scripture, these stories that we've heard since we were children. One is tradition. What has the church had to say about these places for all of this time? And what are the things about our worship and church tradition that kind of inform how we understand these stories? And
Mhm.
then archaeology. That's the third element that,
Yeah.
sometimes challenges what the scripture and tradition have said, but sometimes totally affirms what those two have said. And so I was talking about the balance between those three and how really it's different for each one of us. Like for some people, the most important one of those three things is going to be scripture, and they could care less about tradition and about archaeology. They just want to see these Bible stories that they've read and memorized and imagined since they were children. There's other people who are going to be really interested in the 2,000-year-long trajectory of this group of people called Christians and what that's meant in this place. And then there's people like me who love a plot twist, who, when I find out that Jesus was probably born in a cave, not a barn, I'm like, oh,
Mhm.
wow, tell me more. But for each one of us, it's, which one of those things weighs more is different. And as comfortable as I am with sort of the balance that I've found in between those three things, I'm excited about the fact that I'm going to spend this week and a half with people whose balance is different from mine. And they may be
Mhm.
blown away by something that I would have totally missed if I didn't have this opportunity to be on this pilgrimage with a group of people. So I'm really,
Yeah.
really looking forward to that.
Yeah. Exactly.
So we're going to see you guys in Galilee. We overlap for a couple of nights at the same kibbutz in Galilee, and then
Yay!
we're gonna overlap for a couple of nights and stay in the same hotel in Jerusalem. So looking forward to seeing you and to seeing the other global mission partners and seeing how excited they're going to be about it. So I think it's really cool that even though we're doing separate trips this time, we're actually going to be there at the same time and sort of overlap, and it's going to be good. I can't wait.
It's like we planned it that way.
It's like we planned it that way.
Well, I'm excited too. And what I hope that all of our listeners get today is that they get the excitement that we're having as we go to Israel, and maybe it will spark something in them that they will seek out a trip either with their church, or maybe just maybe, we should have a broken banquet Holy Land trip.
Okay, 2025.
Maybe so. Maybe so.
Okay,
Okay.
alrighty. You heard it here first.
Listeners, be prepared. Mark your calendar. All right. Well, Will, I guess I'll see you in a couple days.
Yep. Great to talk to you, Ashley. Hope everybody gets as excited about this as we are. See you soon.
You too. Bye, Will.
Bye.
You've been listening to The Broken Banquet, a podcast by Will Bailey and Ashley Goad. Music provided by Irene and the Sleepers. Join us next week for another episode. He's prepared the table. All things are ready. Come to the feast.